Hey, so wrapped up the install on your Warsabers Starkiller V4 hilt and kind of want to do a little demo video on some of the features of the install. So here's your Starkiller. We have our exposed crystal chamber over here. Got a control box back here. Got a glass eye here, as well as a shine through here where the red button would be on a Graflex hilt. In there we have our Illuminated NeoPixel connector, which you probably can't see right now, but that connector is actually situated a little bit below the glass eye here. That way when you have a blade in and when it lights up, you can actually get shine through right here, as well as the hole back here. So let's turn on the Saber for now. So that's just one of the sound fonts on there. I'm gonna turn it on without the sound on, just so we can kind of see the accent LEDs. So there, it played through the ignition. So for this hilt, we actually have the crystal chamber, actually the crystal itself, illuminated at the base right there. We also have an accent LED strip behind the chamber. That way you get that animated effect back there. Have our Illuminated NeoPixel connector in there. And then as well, there's also accent LEDs on the actual button control box over here. So we have two accent LEDs there, which can also be styled in different colors. So currently I just have it styled so that the color matches the color of the main blade, along with the crystalline chamber and the back of the crystalline chamber. Just turn that back off. So to access the internals, you do unscrew the body section, but if you notice right there, there's a set screw. So that set screw actually helps to align this cover tech either clockwise, so if you face it this way, clockwise, or counterclockwise from the crystal chamber. So to access the internals, first you want to unscrew this set screw right there. So to unscrew that, you want to use a 1.5mm Allen key. Just be very careful that you're only touching the set screw. And just loosen it. And then make sure not to lose this tiny set screw. And then once you have that unscrewed, you can now unscrew the body section. Revealing your chassis. So you may notice here that there are two grooves. There's one groove there, one groove there. So once you have the body kind of almost fully screwed in, you can then use the set screw to kind of wedge it in place or set it in place using either this groove here or this one, depending on whether you want the cover tech wheel either clockwise from the crystal chamber or counterclockwise from the crystal chamber. So here's your chassis in a light gray. We have our Proffie v3.9. So I gave you a free Proffie v3 upgrade just because there's a lot of blinkies to wire up and style on this, as well as the USB in the control box. So upgrading to v3 just makes it a lot easier, as well as you get data access via this USB-C, as well as slow charging, so about 450 milliamps. So on the chassis, we have our board. We have two accent LED strips here. So right now I just have this pulsating effect showing the current battery level of the battery. And then to the sides there, I just kind of have two segmented sections just to show the color of the main blade, or what the color of the main blade would be. Up here, you might not actually need these, and ideally 99% of the time you don't. But in case you do need to put the board into bootloader mode in order to upload, either if you were to upload through Arduino, it doesn't work out, you get that 1 to 10 countdown, it's not making a connection. You can set it to bootloader mode, which basically puts it into kind of like a standby state that you can just upload configs to by holding this switch and then pressing and releasing that switch. So basically, if you go through the documentation to put into bootloader mode, you hold down the boot button on the physical board itself, and then tap the reset button. So I just wired these two buttons to those because I do have the board orientation flipped upside down, so you no longer have access to the boot and reset buttons. So I just wired it up and put it externally on the chassis. Over here we have our kill switch. So this serves to cut power to the board. So if you flip it, toggle it to the left, it cuts power to the board. Toggle to the right, it turns it on. Down here we have our 28mm bass speaker, which actually makes it pretty loud. When inserting and removing the battery, you want to wedge your fingernail in there. So to remove the battery, I just wedge my thumb fingernail into the positive slot, just kind of wedge it in there. I popped it right now just because like I trim my fingernails so it's a little bit shorter. So to pry it out, just get the positive end first, and then you can use the sides here to kind of just pop it out. Have our battery holder, marked positive there, negative there, spring side for the negative flat side of the battery, and then the button side for the button top side of the battery. So this takes a Keep Power button top 18650 battery. This is just one of my personal batteries I have for testing Sabers. I got it rewrapped in red. So when inserting the battery, I like to insert it negative first because my chassis does have this little lip here. That lip kind of helps hold the battery in a little bit tighter. Once you have the battery in, you can flip the kill switch on to the right. Right here is also kind of marked with the off and on symbols. And then once you have that, you can screw the body back on about here, and then just rotate it so that this set screw hole lines up with this crystal chamber rod, roughly. And then you can put your set screw back on. So I got that set screw roughly in. Make sure to be careful that you're only touching the set screw, and then just tighten that back in. You want to make sure that this set screw hole lines up with either of the crystal chamber rods because you don't want to damage the threads. You want to make sure that the set screw sits within those grooves in the threaded section. Now that we have the body back on, we can now insert the blade. For the blade retention screw, right there, you want to use a 2mm Allen key. So again, make sure that you're being careful with not touching the hilt itself. I'll loosen the set screw just enough, it doesn't need to back out all the way. And then you can insert your NeoPixel blade. So for the purpose of this demo, I just have a 1-inch test blade. I'll slide that in. So you might need to loosen this as well because it also acts as blade retention. Tighten that. And then tighten this set screw. So now that the blade is in, you can now play with your saber. On this control box over here, there are two switches. There's one tactile switch located about here, and another one located about here. Currently I have it styled so that the main switch is this top switch, and the auxiliary is for the bottom switch. The main switch is kind of for blade activation as well as traction, and the auxiliary switch is mainly for like auxiliary effects like blaster block, lightning block, stuff like that. So you can tap the main switch to turn the saber on. This blade style or this preset, as well as the sound font, has a pre-on, which is kind of that effect at the start. You can see the LED strips at the back of the crystal chamber kind of running up the crystal chamber. Got shine through there, as well as back here. We have blaster blocks. Now flash on flash. Got smooth swipe. As well as action swipe. also configured some gesture controls like twist off as well as swing on. On the control box, you also have access to the USB-C over here. So with this one, you can actually access the data on the Proffie board itself if you want to make config uploads, you want to make changes to your Saber, as well as slow charging. So about 450 milliamps charging from this port. To cycle through the sound fonts, I loaded about 15 of our previous sound fonts on here. So these are the Kyber sound fonts from Jadalorian.
I'm right. I'm a Jedi, like my father before me.
So on each of the sound fonts, on each of the presets, got the LED strip running at the back of the crystal chamber, as well as the actual crystal itself, as well as the button PCB also matches the blade color.
Rey Skywalker.
My rightful place. Light to the 2 seconds, sister.
So going back to some of the older fonts that we have. Commando, the Jedi Commando font. And back to the Jadalorian fonts. So there you have it. There's your Warsabers Starkiller installed with Proffie v3.9 with a custom static chassis. So in terms of configuring the Saber, there's actually a lot to go through. There's about 10 kind of lighting methods or lighting sources that I need to configure for the main blade, crystal chamber, button PCB, as well as the accent LED strips. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to let me know. I'm going to be loading the config I've uploaded on the Saber onto the SD card, as well as send it to you over email for both of the Sabers. So thank you so much for letting me work on this, and may the Force be with you.